Hi, I'm Jenni Jepsen, and I am so happy to be part of Resilience Week and Comparative Agility's initiative to help World Vision. So, thank you so much for attending my little talk here today. I'll be talking about how do we create environments where people thrive. And this ties into resilience, of course, right? We want to have places where people can do their best thinking. And involving and engaging people is the key. So when we involve and engage people, we create ownership, we give ownership to others. We move the bias from proving how great we are, to improving, whether it's our organizations, our products, ourselves. And how do we get there? We need to act our way to new thinking. We can't think our way to new acting. So that's the overall theme of today. And I thought I would share with you, I'm working with leaders in organizations to do all of these things. And of course, in theory, it sounds super easy. In practice, not so much. So today I'm going to share with you my top 10 questions that I get from leaders and some ideas for solutions. So there could be some inspiration, I hope, for all of you watching today. All right, I'll jump right into the first one. The first question, how do I stop myself from jumping to conclusions or offering solutions before I truly understand the problem we want to solve? Now, this ties directly into our brains. We move from listening to something to acting very, very quickly. So we need to help overcome how our brains work. So this observe, interpret, act, there's some feeling and thinking in there as well, but essentially this is the process that our brains use. We observe something, so we hear or we see something, and we make interpretations very, very quickly based on how we feel about it, what we think about it. Nanoseconds, it happens in the brain. And then the acting, so what we do. So perhaps jumping to conclusions, for example. And instead of jumping to those conclusions, what we want to do is get used to how can we stop ourselves. So a way to do that is to have some questions in your brain. So before you act, so that's the easiest place to stop yourself. So you're having these interpretations, these feelings, these thoughts about what's going on. And before you say anything, ask yourself some questions. What do I actually observe? What am I hearing? What am I seeing? What's actually happening here in this situation? And then, how does this make me feel? Or how am I interpreting this? What is it about this that makes me think this? And if it's something that is from your own perspective, maybe some baggage that you have from a previous experience, or maybe it's not baggage, but it's just great experience, so you jump to the conclusion, ask yourself, does this apply here? And instead of just jumping to that conclusion, you can ask yourself, okay, what action should I take now? What questions should I ask now? So this is a way to tie into how we're thinking, to stop yourself from jumping to conclusions and really, really open up the doors to understanding what the other person has to say, which leads me to the next question. What are the most effective techniques for asking questions to encourage genuine understanding? I love this question. For us, and I know for all of you, you know plenty of listening theory, if you will, and how many of us are thinking about what we're going to say next rather than just purely listening. So in order to really get that genuine understanding, I rely on some techniques. So some interview techniques, actually. My background, my education is as a journalist. So I learned how to ask questions and then just listen. And when you do that, you can get some very, very deep understanding. So I'm going to share some of my favorite questions. So there's a technique called the 4 questions. And it's especially useful going into a new situation. Maybe there's a change in the organization. Maybe you're working on some new products or new features or something like that. Maybe you have a new team member that you want to get to know better. This works also really great at parties. So the 4 questions: what's working well? Now, of course, you need to put it in context. So what's working well in relation to this new feature the team is working on? Or what's working well as you move into our organization, the onboarding process? So you need to have some sort of frame, some context around it. And then, what do you want to stop doing? What do you want to start doing? And what's your one wish? And in here, I'm also asking, is there more that you want to stop doing? Or is there more that you want to start doing? I don't ask if there's more than one wish. They just get one wish. And this is an interview technique. This is not a conversation technique. And borrowing from journalists, this interview technique will help you understand the situation. And you can go back then and think about it. And then maybe there's some clarifying questions or something that you want to come back with. This technique works super well getting that deep understanding. And it's so good for you as the leader at whatever level. And great for the person who's being listened to, because you actually feel like somebody is genuinely listening to what you have to say. So that's one technique in sort of those situations. That's where I use them most. Also one-on-ones, it works really great. And I usually tell people ahead of time what the questions are so they're not afraid. This yes and these questions here. So you're hearing somebody, they're telling you something, and you're trying to really genuinely understand what it is that they're talking about. You want them maybe to share some more. So my favorite thing is to say, tell me more. Tell me more. I want to hear more. Tell me more. What advantage would that bring? So maybe if you're looking for some clarifying questions, building on what they're saying, what advantage would that bring? Or which pain points could that address? Again, building on what they're saying with this yes and idea. So that rather than you coming in and saying, oh, well, I have this idea, this is how we should do it, it keeps things open. So keep asking those open questions is a way to get that genuine understanding. Alrighty. Question 3. Once we start planning how we're going to achieve our goals, how do I ensure that everyone feels a sense of ownership and responsibility for the plan? Yes. So the way plans are made in organizations, that's changing, of course, as we realize the value to be achieved can be done quicker by creating a broader understanding of where we're going, what it is we want to achieve, what are those customer pain points we want to address. It's getting better and better. So whatever level we're planning, we need to involve the people who will be doing the work. That's the key. So if you are involved in the planning as the doer, for example, you will feel more ownership for it. You will be able to have your voice heard about prioritization, for example, or what's feasible, in addition to, what's valuable, what's usable, and all of the considerations that we look at when we do planning at various levels. So whether it's the strategic sort of overview, if you will, longer term plan, roadmaps, or team plans, we want to involve and engage people who are doing the work in the planning of the work. And here is where facilitation is your friend. So borrowing on this facilitation fish, if you will, where we present the goal, we open up for brainstorming, discussion, deciding, and we get to a result. And presenting the goal in terms of planning, right, whatever level we're planning at, we want to create our roadmap for the next year. And these are the pain points we want to address that we know already from our research or whatever from last year's work or whatever it was. This is what we want to do. And we want to do this not once a year, for example, with the roadmap. We want to do it at least every quarter, so that we're replanning and reprioritization. So keep that in mind, that that agility part is baked into this. Here, I'm simply talking about how to involve and engage people in this process. So we present the goal, we open it up for ideas, brainstorming, whatever it is. We have room for discussion. Is this feasible? How long would it take to do this? Is it valuable for the organization? Can customers use it? All of those types of discussions. And then deciding on prioritization, for example, and we get to a result. We've got our plan. And our plan is the best guess that we have right now. And again, we want to revisit if this is a year-long roadmap, for example, at least every quarter. You can use the same technique to involve and engage the people who are doing the work in your sprint planning, right? So it shouldn't just be maybe a product manager or product owner if you're working with some more traditional agile methodologies, who are coming in and deciding this is what we should do. We need the team involved as well. So we provide clarity, the understanding, where are we going, and this whole idea of pushing authority to the people who are closest to the information. So the people who are doing the work should be discussing and deciding on it as well. And then we create ownership in this process, right? So we give ownership to the people who are doing it, and yay, we all take ownership then in the plan. So it's not just owned by one person or one area in the organization. So this is a way that we can create ownership for plans in our companies. All right, number 4, how do we know if we're doing the right things for our customers? So we're doing our planning, and of course we're working in an agile way with whatever pragmatic agile approach you're using in your organizations. How do we know we're on the right track? Yep. Validation, right? So this is my little development graphic, if you will. So the tip of that the black triangle there, the tip, is our hypothesis, what we know right now about what we want to achieve. What are those customer pain points or opportunities that we want to meet? And then we do the work in a short iteration or sprint, again, if you're using agile methodologies, but a short period of time, and then we show things, right? Who do we show them to? Our customers, the people who are actually using the products, features, whatever it is, that the solutions that we're making, whether they're internal or external customers, right? And then we get feedback, and that feedback guides our next step. So it's the feedback loops here that really are determining if we're on the right track. And sometimes, actually a lot of times, teams either are not getting that deep feedback from the actual users of the products or solutions, if you will. And instead, maybe they're getting it from proxies or stakeholders. And that is not what we're talking about here. So we want to have fast and frequent feedback from actual customers. And there's a variety of ways to do this. So, Teresa Torres, Marty Kagan, if you haven't read their books, read them, because they have a lot of good ideas on how we can get closer to the customers and get this fast, frequent feedback. And that's how we know if we're on the right track. And that's the only way we know, is to ask. So, and I think this question in particular is one of those like, oh, is there another way to do this? Nope. This is the only way, at least that I know of, to do this. Alrighty, number 5. What things can I do to give more decision-making power to my teams? So this is coming, of course, from the leader's perspective here, maybe somebody who's leading several teams. And maybe that particular leader is used to making decisions. And maybe that particular leader is also being rewarded for making those decisions, right? I'm the boss, so I'm supposed to be making all these decisions. Again, if we want to create spaces where people are thriving, where they feel ownership, where they're involved and engaged, where they're moving from, just proving that they are competent to actually getting better and better and making better and better products, then we have to give more decision-making power to people who are closest to the information. And one of the books I can highly recommend is David Marquet's Turn the Ship Around. So lots of tips and tricks on how to do this. And this is one of them. So on the y-axis, we have this give control. So it would be giving control to others. And on the x-axis, we have competence and clarity of others. So how much competence, how much clarity do people have? And we give control, or the amount of control that we give is based on tuning competence and clarity. And this is a safe way then to give more decision-making power to teams or team members so that, the decisions aren't bad or scary for that leader, but actually could be something even better than the leader thought of him or herself. So how do we do this? How do we give control to others based on the competence and clarity of others? Now, here I'm going to make an assumption that the people working in your organizations are competent. They know their job. They have the skills. Otherwise, I'm thinking, why are they working there? Now, I know you may have some junior people, of course, but in general, you've got a group of very competent players in your organization. And the clarity, right? So do we have direction? Do we understand where we're going? Do we know what it is we want to achieve? What's on our roadmap? What are our strategic ambitions? All of those questions. And again, probably they know. I don't know. So how do we do this? Do we make sure people have competence and clarity, or do we give control first? So the only way to know, I'm afraid to say, is to go up. So we have to give control first. Maybe it's just a small amount of control, and then if nothing bad happens, we feel okay. I've got this sort of inner control freak in me. So sometimes it's like, oh, this is kind of scary to give control. For others, it's no problem. And of course, it depends on situations. Some things, that I don't care so much about, I don't need to know anything about it. Someone else can decide. If it's something that I might be responsible for in the organization, an area that I'm responsible for, that could be super scary for me as a leader to give that kind of control. So I might want to just give a little control, and then if nothing bad happens, it's like, yay, I can give more control. Yay, this is good. And now I give more control. Oh, suddenly something happens. Some sort of mistake. This is also an opportunity, right? We close then this competence and clarity gap. And in our sort of unofficial surveys around where the mistakes happen or for what reason, is it competence or is it clarity? 75% or even more now of the time, it's a clarity issue. And again, because you're hiring competent people. So the clarity issue, this understanding together what it is that we are hoping to achieve, is super important. We need to spend a lot of time on that. So building that clarity. And then we sort of keep doing this. And in this way, if you zoom back, maybe it's a Monet Impressionist painting, zooming back, you see this kind of line, I guess, going up, where you have an optimal work environment. So giving that decision-making power to the people who are closest to the information, right? It makes more sense. We can't really make decisions for others that we don't know anything about. So having our team members make those decisions usually makes a lot more sense for the organization. And it builds motivation for the team member as well, giving this control. You're showing that you trust them. They get autonomy. They feel influence. All of that builds resilience. And it also builds better products in the organization. So if you have that little control freak gene like I do, keep telling yourself that this is for the benefit of others customers, organization, and of course your teams. And that makes it a little bit easier to give that decision-making power away, if you're like me, that is, and have a tough time with it. All right, the next question that I get a lot is, how do I shift the focus from simply completing tasks to continuously seeking improvement? So this gets into what I was talking about earlier, this bias for proving versus improving. And we want to be able to improve. This is what makes us better, right? We don't want to just be good. We want to be even better than we are today as organizations with our products, delivering value for our customers better and better and better. And we want to be better ourselves. It's actually a motivator. So the neuroscience shows that becoming even better at what you do is a motivator. Both norepinephrine and dopamine are released in the brain, and we feel that rush of, yes, this is so great. So how do we do this? Especially in maybe an environment where there's a lot of stress happening or the psychological safety isn't quite as great as it could be. So here, this matrix, it's from Amy Edmondson, and her book, The Fearless Organization, is where this matrix comes from. So we have the psychological safety axis, the y-axis, and then performance standards on the x-axis. So we need to have both. We need to have high psychological safety, so this feeling of, it doesn't mean we're all friends. I mean, it could be. At least we respect each other. We can disagree without it being personal. We can disagree on the tasks. We can challenge each other without feeling like it's a personal attack. This is the kind of psychological safety that I'm talking about here. The performance standards are, what's the quality that we expect in our organization or in our team? How do we deliver? So borrowing from agile ways of working, for example, definitions of done, acceptance criteria, they are all part of our performance standards. And some teams go even deeper and they create their own performance standards for the team. This is where we want to be as a team in terms of how we deliver and what we achieve and all of that. And in my experience, okay, now I'm using a little proving language. In my experience, what I hear, what I see in organizations is that teams that set their own performance standards, they're more, more higher, if you will, even tougher to reach than if the performance standards are sort of dripped down from the top of the organization saying this is how we must work. So let your teams come up with their own performance standards. You'll have better stuff. So we want to have a learning and high performance organization, right? So we need to have the combination. And we also need to understand that we are on this continuum. This is called the toward away continuum. And the organizing principle of the brain is to minimize danger and maximize reward. So minimizing danger, that's this attitude of, I need to move away from something that could be scary and bad for me, right? This is how we've survived as a species for tens of thousands of years, right? We're able to see when something is dangerous and we run away from it. And it's actually our limbic system that helps us with this process, right? And when our limbic system is activated, our prefrontal cortex, which is this part of the brain right behind the eyes, where our rational, objective thinking is happening, is not activated. So rather than have that attitude of moving away from danger, we want to help nudge people toward reward so that they feel that, this is interesting and cool and curious. And seeking improvement is about moving toward reward because it feels motivating for the brain to become even better. So when we move toward reward, we see change as challenge and we're open and curious and we're interested. We have this feeling of, let's do this. I intend to, or we intend to. And the focus is on getting better, on improving. When we're moving away from danger, we want to just keep things the way they are because it could be super scary to change. Change is danger. And we feel more a threat response. That's the flight, fight, or freeze mode, or flock. That's the fourth F. So all coming together in a little group like a bunch of sheep, and then we just sort of protect ourselves from danger altogether. And that's where the proving mindset comes in, where we just want to do what we've always done, just finish my task, nothing bad will happen. Something bad could happen if I try to become better. I could fail at this, or we could fail at this, and that can be scary. So what we need to do as leaders to help our teams move from that, protecting against danger by just simply completing the task and doing no more, to seeking improvements, moving toward the reward side, the improving side, is to reward them. And I don't mean financial rewards. I mean like, yes, this is so fantastic that you guys jumped in and you're looking for a way to make this even better, and be specific in whatever feedback that you have. So it can't just be, oh, awesome. It needs to be, oh, awesome. And this is why. This is the effect it has on our customers or on the organization or on you as a leader, for example. So reward in that way, and that helps nudge people more toward that reward side of the brain, where chances are they'll then be more likely to continue seeking improvements rather than just doing the tasks, right? Because we feel more motivated, more engaged, more appreciated, more valued for that. And that helps that move toward reward side. So that's a way to do it, a brain-based way to do this. Oh, yeah. Continuing on the proving, right? How can I identify if my team or I are operating from a proving mindset? So I get this question a lot too. So what are those telltale signs of a proving mindset? Now, let me say that we're not one way or another on everything. So there are some situations where maybe you do need to prove yourself a little, like in a job interview, for example. I wish it was different, but that's just how it is, right? You need to prove your competence, at least in the beginning. And then after that, if we can set that proving aside and open up for improving, that's where we would like to be in a resilient organization, for example. So how can I identify if my team or I are operating from a proving mindset? So this is the observing part. So listening to what you hear. What kind of language are people using? Is it a lot of like, oh, we can't do that because, or in my experience, we should, or I have done that so many times, we just should do this that way again. So those kinds of statements, that's sort of a proving mindset, like I know best, so let's do it my way, or our team knows best, so we should do it this way. Now, I'm not saying that that might not be the right way. I mean, it could be the right way. I don't know. We want to at least open ourselves up to the idea of improving. So what is it that we could do? And again, coming back to my toward away continuum here, that the proving mindset is fear-based. Do I not look competent enough? Are people going to find out that, oh, actually, I don't know this, or whatever that might be? Those are the things that keep us sort of on that proving side, the move away from danger side. And again, this is where limbic system is activated. And what we want is our prefrontal cortex to be activated, because that's where our rational, objective, creative, innovative thinking is happening. So some of the things that we can do as leaders is to jump in and say, hey, okay, you can't yet. Or if you hear somebody saying, well, in my experience, we can say, that's great. That's so good that you have this experience. And I think we should, keep that in mind as we move forward. And maybe there's some other ideas. I'd like to hear more ideas. Let's get some more ideas out on what it is that we could possibly do. And role model the behavior, right? So if you don't know something as a leader, say, I don't know. Let's find out together. This could be something that we could play with, right? Or experiment with, or whatever it is. So we want to reward the effort for seeking this improvement again, right? So building on the previous question. So identifying whether we're in approving mindset, you can hear it. You can hear it. It is. I can't, in my experience, if only this is the way we should do it. And we don't have time to do it any other way, so let's do it the way that we've been doing it. Those are telltale signs that we're in a approving mindset. And you as a leader can nudge people out of that just by asking questions, asking for more ideas, and then exploring those solutions, prioritizing the ideas, and then exploring those solutions. Number 8. How can I create an environment where people feel safe to experiment and try new things? So again, we're coming back to that psychologically safe environment. And what are people getting rewarded for? And are we able to try new things and fail, for example? So experiments are a great way to help overcome that fear, if you will, and make people feel safe to try new things. So I love experiments, and they can be big experiments, they can be small experiments. They need to be real experiments. So, and what do I mean by a real experiment? I mean that it has a hypothesis statement, right? It's got a title. What is it that we're going to try? It's got a hypothesis statement that's objective or neutral, right? It doesn't sort of bias us one way or the other toward a result. That we have success criteria or evaluation criteria. So what is it that we're evaluating? What are we trying to achieve here with this experiment? It's got a start date, an end date, and an evaluation date. And if it goes longer than a month, I would definitely have check-in dates along the way. So, and then what are the conditions for the experiment if you want to try something new? So one of the things that that I guess I've been working on a little recently is getting 90-day planning into an organization that was having some troubles creating clarity around plans and planning. And they wanted to involve and engage all the people who are doing the planning. And so anyway, starting with 90-day planning, I said, great, let's create an experiment. And the experiment was 90-day planning in this company. That was the title. The description was 90-day planning. If we do 90-day planning, then we'll have more engaged team members and stakeholders who have a better understanding of where we're going. That was pretty much it. It might have been a little less fluffy than what I just said. The evaluation criteria was, are people collaborating more across the organization? Do stakeholders have a better understanding of what the teams are doing? Do we have fewer dependencies? So very clear things, and some required baseline surveys. So we want to have data for this. That's what I mean about a real experiment. We have all these things borrowing on the scientific method. So it's not one of the, like a fake experiment, which is, oh, we're going to do 90-day planning. Yeah, it'll be an experiment. And then there's no actual experiment. It's just somebody who said it. And then the team members are running around going, this is not an experiment. This is just a way of shoving this into our organization and then, trying to make it sound like it's not going to stay. So real experiments do these things, and real experiments at the end of them, evaluating the success or evaluation criteria, the conditions of the experiment were they met, like for instance, the conditions here. Are people attending? That was one of the conditions. Stakeholders do not change the plan immediately after the 90-day planning. Now, some adjustments, of course, are okay, but the overall plan is not like changed immediately for no reason except a stakeholder didn't like it or whatever. So that's what I mean about a real experiment, is that we have all of these things. I can tell you the experiment was a success, but I won't go into more details. It went super well. Experiments are a great way of breaking down the resistance to change and making it feel safer, because if they fail, then we move on to something else, right? We don't stick with it. We adjust, we learn, and we adjust, and we improve, and we try again. And in that way, just like we do with product development, we can introduce new things, try new things with experiments as well, in ways of working or ways of leading. All right. Number 9, how can I emphasize the value of learning by doing and encourage people to embrace challenges? Oh, there's so much psychological safety, right? It's the foundation of high-performing teams. I know that you know this. And this whole idea of fear of failure it's just in our brains that, oh, if I fail at this, or if we fail at this, will we be punished in some way? Will we not get the cool new assignment? Will our budget be cut? Will I get fired or whatever? So, we need to have this psychological safety so people feel that they can embrace a challenge even if they don't know right now how to solve it. One of the things that I love is that this whole idea of the rate at which we learn is a competitive advantage for us in our organizations. I mean, things are changing so quickly, so the faster we learn and try something else and work with something else, the more value we bring to our customers and to our organizations. So looking again at this matrix from Amy Edmondson, this learning and high performance organization about embracing these challenges, and a little bit more detail on this next slide here. So addressing the whole idea of failure, if something has happened, how can we deal with that in order to nudge people more toward that reward side so they feel still open and curious and interested and are focused on improving? So acknowledge the mistake or error or failure or whatever, name it, and then ask, was it preventable? And if the answer is yes, so some sort of process mistake, was it preventable, then don't blame. Because if we blame someone for the mistake, it doesn't make the mistake go away. What it does is shuts down thinking, because then we're completely in either a stress state or a fear state. We're threatened, and that shuts down our prefrontal cortex completely. So what we want to do is figure this out together. So some kind of retrospective or whatever. How can we fix this process mistake without creating a template for everyone else in your organization, perhaps? So you don't have to send any signals. You just need to make the process better. If it was not preventable, these are the kind of intelligent failures or mistakes that we want. This is how we learn. This is how we embrace those challenges, right? So we need to celebrate that learning. And the sooner we find out, the better it is, right? Because then we can move on to something else. This is what we talk about when we're celebrating failures in agile organizations, right? We don't want to celebrate the preventable ones. We're celebrating the things that we don't know, and the only way to find out is to do something. And so that's what we want to encourage. And the more, you don't have to have a party for this, unless you want to. Reward the behavior, praise, be specific. This is so great. We learned this now instead of a year from now, right? So there's so many cool ways that you can learn fast and embrace challenges. Have hackathons, do 24-hour improvement days or whatever. There's a lot of techniques out there to make it easier to embrace challenges and learning by doing. All right, now my last question. How can I overcome the natural resistance to change? So, in our brains, we do. Change is dangerous for our brains. It's because anything that's new for our brains, the brain registers as a threat. Again, this is how we've survived as a species. So if we see that little red berry in the woods that we haven't seen before, it's like, I'll wait till someone else eats that and see what happens, right? It could be dangerous. So we need to be able to get over our natural resistance to change. And some ideas here. So, of course, with our brains, knowing that we have this natural resistance to change, there are things that we can do to sort of normalize it, to make it easier. So breaking down the steps, if you will, slicing the changes. So instead of great big changes, maybe they're constant adjustments that we're doing, right? If we're reflecting together, whether it's a retrospective or some other improvement session, what can we do? We don't need to do the big whole thing. We can do a teeny tiny thing first. Let's see how it goes. And then we do the next teeny tiny thing and the next and the next and the next. And that makes it safer for our brains to handle the change. So much safer for our brains. We also need to tell change stories. So, we need to understand what the change is about, right? What's in it for me, what's expected of me, and all of that. And it could be that I still don't like that change. I'm still afraid of that change, even though I'm not admitting that I'm afraid. It's just, it feels scary to me. So storytelling is your friend. Tell stories of how other places have changed, what you've done in previous situations. Tell your own stories. They can be personal stories of change or professional stories of change. Make it easier and connect emotionally through stories with people to help break down that natural resistance to change. It will feel safer for the brain. Experimenting. Now I've talked about experimenting for a while. This is, again, a really safe way to, make change happen. And again, slicing down. So you could have an experiment for everything that you want to change. You probably don't need to create an experiment for every single thing, but maybe some of the big things or the things that a lot of people are expressing resistance to. And when people are involved and engaged in the change, whatever the change might be, there's less resistance because they feel they've been heard, they've had influence, even if they don't agree with the change. So just involving them, getting their contribution, ideas to how we could do this, helps break down the natural resistance to change. And then acknowledging where people are on the toward away continuum. So depending on how much is going on in somebody's life, a lot of stress, you might already be at that, protect myself from danger side of the continuum. So coming in and saying, yeah, this change is going to be fantastic and we're all going to do this and it's being, so great. And maybe that person or even that team has been through changes before where actually it's not been great. It's been really awful. And so all of those experiences are rolling around in our brains, and that's what we bring to the table. So we need to meet people where they are. So if they're at that, I don't like change, it's been really difficult in the past, bad things have happened, we need to acknowledge that. Start where people are and say, hey, I know this has happened to you before. Or with the team or whatever, let's sit down and talk about this and how we will make this different and involve and engage your team in that process as well. So, and by doing those things, you can help people through that resistance to change and make change easier because, honestly, we're changing every single day, right? So what if we change the way we think about change and just built it in, like making small adjustments? It would be a lot less scary. So that's my answer around the resistance to change. And I'm going to now conclude with a couple things. So, one, there's more information here in our book about doing different things. And then also, of course, comparativeagility.com. And really, when we want to create these environments where people thrive, where it's resilient organizations, we need to involve and engage people for their own motivation, maybe even more importantly, for the great results it will bring for your company and for your customers. And when we understand together, right, we create that clarity. We know where we're going. And when we plan together, we know what we want to achieve and how we're going to do that. And when we validate together, hello, we know if we're on the right track. We can make adjustments quickly. And then, of course, that reflecting together to learn and improve, to move that bias from proving to improving, and acting your way to new thinking with changes. So using experiments, telling stories, trying things, just doing things, and rewarding the behaviors that you want in your organization will help you get there. So thank you so much for listening, and I am so excited to be able to take your questions as well. So bring them on, and thank you so much for now.